I wanted to cover all the bases in the new Netflix adaptation of The Last Airbender. But scouring through the YouTube landscape, I found a lot more people more articulate and talented than me has already talked about it in great details. The one aspect most of them kind of ignored or glossed over is what I'm going to talk about today. But before that, I want to emphasize that this is a completely unbiased analysis of the show. Yes, unlike most creators, I will compare this show to its predecessor side by side, but that doesn't necessarily mean I didn't go into this new show with an open mind. I did, and I certainly hated what I found. I wanted to like it and I wanted to see a new spin on the iconic story, but not by butchering the essence of what made it so iconic in the first place. Plus, I'm of this belief that it's warranted that this new adaptation would be compared to the masterfully crafted animated show. So why hold back? So I am not gonna waste any more of your time. So let's get back to the issue at stake. A brief analysis of They Didn't Do Azula Justice.
Yes, we defeated you for all time. You will never rise from the ashes of your shame and humiliation.
Now, I don't want to get into the larger than life feminist media narrative of how the animated show perfectly writes women. FYI, it kinda does. But we're not here to talk about that. Whenever I try to think of a badass, fierce, loco in the head female antagonist, I always imagine Azula. Azula is specific. Azula is ruthless. Azula is an egomaniac filled with insecurities. Azula is also strong willed. Azula is determined. Azula is intimidating. Azula doesn't take no for an answer. Azula gets what she wants, always by any means necessary. And most importantly,
Azula always lies.
in this vast sea of adjectives, one thing is clear: Azula is a proper package. But this many perfect qualities has also the downside of being so perfect that it could be dull. But no, it's a facade, her Achilles heel, her folly, a lie, a constant battle of needing validation, not from anyone but herself. Maybe a bit from her parents also, but that doesn't peek through very often. The consistency in trying to manage this perfect form comes at a price, and that is sanity. And let me tell you, Azula is crazy. That's what makes it so fun to follow this unpredictable character. The unpredictability in her actions, the coyness in her demeanor, and actively trying to hide her vulnerability so no one can use this against her is so appealing. I'll admit, the season 2 of the animated show could have done a much better job of portraying Azula's vulnerable side as to what came after. The volume in her madness is at times iffy, but I won't go too far to say it's inconsistent. It's not easy to write a character that scares you. Azula is a constant threat to Team Avatar, a worthy opponent that never rests. When she's angry, most of the time Bit just ominously smiles. That is chilling. That is scary. There's a reason she became an instant fan favorite. There was charm in her evilness, irony in her diction, spark in her cruelty.
अरे बस कर रुलाएगा क्या
She made everyone collectively love and hate her. Also made everyone feel bad for her in the end. Now that's the mark of a great character.
My own mother thought I was a monster. She was right, of course, but it's still her.
Now the live action show. Jesus. First of all, no hate to Elizabeth Hugh. I'm sure she's a very talented actress. Given how every other characters are treated in this show, I'm blaming the script and the showrunners on this one. Azula in the live action adaptation is whiny. Oh no, my father loves Zuko more than me. Oh, I work and work and work, still get no validation. Zuko is supposed to be whiny. If you give both of these characters the same traits, you miss the point of Azula completely. Azula is the quasi perfect standard Zuko reacts against, not the other way around. Yes, Azula too had an ongoing jealousy thing with Zuko in the animated show. Her insecurities were always present, but you had to read between the lines. It was always subtle. She never said it out loud. In fact, she never said any of her motivations out loud. It was through her actions. She was masterful at manipulating Zuko and her crew, and always getting the upper hand. Plus, this Azula is not scary at all. She's like a brat. She's at best pulling a Joffrey, but without any of the compelling insanity. The real Azula was massively overqualified, where this one seems to talk the talk, not bend the bend. I'm sorry. I think the problem also lies in the structure as well. They introduced her way too soon. One thing that made Azula very scary in the second season of the Avatar is how little information we had about her. We knew her lineage, her relation to Zuko, but we were unable to exactly point out what she was thinking or thinking of even doing. But this Azula just says it out loud everything she believes in, everything she plans to do. Like in the last episode, where Zhao reveals to Zuko that Azula was behind him all along. The showrunners play this scene as if it was a big twist, but they literally showed Azula's involvement a few episodes back. What are you doing, my guy? We know! I mean, to be fair, this treatment of tell down show is something all characters suffers throughout in this show. I guess the writers didn't get the screenplay memo. The art of subtlety, the art of the implied is lost on these writers. Also, the other thing that made Azula interesting is how she interacted with her peers, more specifically May and Ty Lee. But this adaptation's interpretation of May and Ty Lee is so fucking stupid. Like, they're completely devoid of any personality. Their unique characteristics are lost in the void of mediocrity. They're just yes women to Azula. In the original show, there was a lot of nuances given to their interactions. They didn't like Azula, but feared her. And that setup comes back in a huge way in the third season. There's no thought or effort given to these amazing side characters in this show, and because of their dynamics being butchered, Azula also suffers. She's not intimidating nor interesting. Okay, I'll give the show this. There's just one glimpse of Azula that I saw in this train wreck of a show. It's where the rebel gets burned and Azula watches with sadistic amusement. That single frame feels truer to the real deal than her other countless appearances. I don't think it's too late. If season 2 does happen, Elizabeth Yu will have a lot more to do character wise. As you can tell, I love Azula. Characters like her barely work in the media. They often come through as unintentionally goofy or one dimensional. But Azula changed that. She deserves more respect. I think Elizabeth Yu as Azula works. She just needs better material to work with. And I wish, no, I pray before the writing begins for season 2, the writers and the showrunners take a hard look at the mirror to finally give some effort to create one of the greatest female antagonists ever put on screen.